Level 1. The student. You are 8 years old, and what you call school is a madrassa. 4 walls, a rug, a mullah. The windows are so small that even at noon the room stays dim. Near the village of Kandahar, close to the Pakistani border, your father's fields have either dried up or disappeared under the roads built for American bases. Your mother drops you off in front of these 4 walls every morning. This is education. There is no other option. In the madrasa, you memorize the Quran and learn the prayer times. Literacy doesn't matter here. There is no system to teach reading anyway. What matters is obedience. What matters is understanding what jihad means. Years pass, and one day someone comes from outside, black turban, long beard. His tone of voice is different. His eyes aren't tired like yours. They burn with something else. He talks to you about paradise. He talks to you about martyrdom. And he hands you a Kalashnikov. The word Taliban is Festo means exactly this. Students. Seekers of knowledge. The movement chose this name deliberately. When it emerged in Kandahar in 1994, its founders really were madrasa students, young men cleaning out local warlords and restoring order in a country shattered by the Soviet invasion and torn apart by civil war. People welcomed them like saviors at first. You are now one of those students, 14, 15, maybe 16 years old. There is no salary. Nobody promised you money. What awaits you is food, clothing, weapons, and the feeling that fills you before you sleep each night. The feeling that you are fighting for an entire nation. You adapt quickly to camp life. Morning prayer, physical training, weapons maintenance, Quran, the same cycle, every day. You don't know the real names of the other men in the camp. That is a rule. Secrecy is the foundation of survival here. Level 2. Foot soldier. Your hands are shaking when you arrive at your first checkpoint. 3 years ago, you were picking tomatoes in a village. Now you are standing in the middle of a dirt road between Kandahar and Helmand. AK-47 in hand, 2 men besides you. A truck comes. You stop it. Check it. Let it go. Sometimes you wonder, what is this man carrying? Sometimes you know, sometimes you don't ask. Real combat is different. Planting IEDs, waiting for hours, lying in the basement of a house in some village until a vehicle passes. The Americans described you as a $10 a day soldier, a farmer fighting only for money against a professional army. This became one of the most expensive miscalculations in history. Yes, some came for money, but there were also men whose lands had been bombed, whose relatives had been killed at their weddings, whose homes had been raided in the night. For those men, this was not a question of fates. For those men, it was a question of honor. And in Afghanistan, honor was always been stronger than money. For 20 years, you fought against the most advanced military alliance the world had ever assembled. No aircraft, no tanks, no satellite systems. The West spent $83 billion building the Afghan army. You fought without salaries, without a single drone, often walking through mountains in sandals. And in 2021, you watched that army collapse in front of you. Some things cannot be bought. Level 3. Squad Commander. You command 10 fighters now. These are your men. You know their ages. You know their villages. You know the old wound on one man's leg. War feels different at this scale. It is no longer just about surviving. It is about keeping your men alive. Power in Afghanistan has always been split in two. On one side the tribe, on the other side the organization. You answer to both. The commander above you sends orders from Kandahar, but in your district there is powerful elder. The man whose word carries weight in the tribe. You need to stay on good terms with him too, because if he decides against you, your supply line shuts down by tomorrow. Because if he decides against you, the young men in the village go to your rival instead of you. Serving two masters is exhausting, but everything works this way on these lands. It has worked this way for years. Level 4. Mahas Commander. Loy Mahas, the Grand Front. You no longer have 10 men. You have around 200 fighters. Your own territory. Your own funding channels. Your own network. The leadership in Quetta sends you orders, but daily operations belong to you. This decentralized structure, each unit largely self-sufficient, was what made the Taliban impossible to destroy for 2 decades. When the Americans killed their commander, the system didn't stop. The next man stepped up, then the next, like a hydra. Money comes from the leadership above, but you develop your own sources too. Local taxes, road tolls, levies from villages, sometimes voluntary, sometimes not. You learn not to ask yourself too many questions about it. Your greatest power is this. People no longer go to the government court. The government court takes months, years. It demands bribes. It eventually delivers a verdict, but the verdict goes unenforced. You, on the other hand, resolve a dispute in 2 days under Sharia law and make sure the decision is carried out. The villagers prefer you. This is something stronger than weapons. This is legitimacy. Level 5. provincial governor. You are now at the head of a province. But you need to understand this. You didn't reach this position before 2001. You reached it after, because in 2001, everything changed. On the morning of September 11, 2001, while two towers collapsed in New York, you were performing the morning prayer in a courtyard in Kandahar. When the news arrived, you didn't quite know what to feel at first. You knew the ones who carried out attack were Al-Qaeda, not the Taliban. But that distinction didn't matter to Americans. Mullah Omar had to make a decision: hand over Bin Laden, preserve power, or protect your guest, lose everything. Omar had been declared commander of the faithful in Kandahar 1996, draped in what was believed to be the cloak of the Prophet Muhammad. And that ceremony gave him not just political, but religious authority. And a man with religious authority cannot hand his guest over to the enemy. I cannot betray my guest. I am willing to sacrifice my regime, he said. Those were his words. On October 7, 2001, American bombs fell on Kandahar. Omar disappeared into the darkness on the back of a motorcycle. What came after, for you and for the entire movement, was 20 years of exile, fragmentation, regrouping, and patience. Meetings were held in Quetta, Pakistan. In 2003, the Rahbari Shura was established, secret but functioning. Shadow governors were appointed. A parallel administration was built for every province: cards, education, taxation, a state inside a state, and that shadow state slowly became more powerful than the real one. You are one of those shadow governors, maybe not from Kandahar, maybe from Helmand, maybe from Kunduz. Your appointment letter comes from Quetta on paper. Your real power, however, comes from your network of people. And Bin Laden, that man whose presence brought the bombs down, had in the 1990s built a mosque in Kandahar for Mullah Omar, had built him a house. Money flowed. The relationship deepened. Then Delta Force occupied that house. Bin Laden had calculated that the world's most powerful army would be drawn into Afghanistan and bleed out in these mountains, just as the Soviet Union had bled in the collapse. 2,977 Americans died that morning, and in the war that followed, somewhere between 700 and 100,000 Afghan civilians lost their lives. The math never added up. It never does. Level 6. Commission member. The Taliban has 16 commissions: military, justice, education, intelligence, political. You are no longer fighting, you are governing. This transition is harder than you expected. You knew how to hold a weapon, you knew how to set an ambush, but a budget spreadsheet is different. Correspondence with foreign governments is different. And in 2013, something happened that almost no one knew for years. Mullah Omar died from tuberculosis in Pakistan, alone. But the leadership concealed this theft for 2 years. During that time, fatwas were issued in his name, orders were given, war decisions were made, a movement governed by the signature of a dead man. No one outside understood, very few inside knew. This taught you something. In this organization, institutions are stronger than individuals. A man dies, the system continues, the symbol is protected, the continuity of beliefs matters more than the truth. When the death was announced in 2015, there was a brief fracture, but the moment regrouped. A new leader was chosen, Mullah Akhtar Mansour. He too was killed in an American drone strike on the Pakistan-Iran border in 2016. The next man stepped in. Level 7. Rahbari Shura. You are now one of the 33 men seated around the table. The Quetta Shura, or more accurately, the Kandahar Shura now, because after 2021, you came home. The decisions made at this table determined who lived and who died. But the heaviest decision ever made at this table wasn't made in 2001. It was made earlier in the 1990s, when Bin Laden arrived in Kandahar and Omar received him as a guest. The relationship was not only ideological, it was concrete, architectural, financial, and when that relationship dragged the entire country into a 20-year war, nobody around this table said out loud what everyone understood privately. You never openly discussed that ledger at this table. What you did discuss, methodically and with discipline, was how to rebuild. The Shura structure was the backbone of everything. For 2 decades, the emir weighed in only sporadically. To settle disputes, to issue guidance, real decisions flowed through consensus among the council. This wasn't democracy. It was something closer to tribal council wrapped in religious authority. But it worked. It outlasted presidencies, coalitions, and commanders. Level 8. The 3 deputies. The commander of the faithful has 3 deputies. Each represents a different axis of power. Sirajuddin Haqqani, Minister of Interior, leader of the Haqqani network, Paktika, Khost, the architect of asymmetric warfare, targeted assassinations, suicide operations, urban strikes. The United States still lists him among its most wanted. He now sits in a ministerial office. Mullah Yaqub, Minister of Defense, Mullah Omar's son. His name is the weight of history he carries. His father was a legend. The son rises in the shadow of that legend. Abdul Ghani Baradar, co-founder, one of the men who started this movement alongside Omar in 1994, arrested in Pakistan 2010, released in 2018 at America's Quest, negotiated with the United States in Doha. When he returned to Kabul in 2021, thousands came out to meet him. 9 years in prison, then victory. Think about what passed between those two things. These three men control access to the commander of the faithful's door. Not everyone gets through that door, and the information that passes through it is not the same for everyone. Level 9, Commander of the Faithful, Haybatullah Akhundzada. There are 2 photographs of him in existence, only 2 confirmed in the entire world. The first was taken more than 20 years ago. Grey beard, white turban, eyes looking directly into the camera. The second is more recent, but still old. A leader with no internet presence, no social media footprint, no digital trace. He communicates his decisions by letter. He speaks with officials by landline telephone. After the Taliban took Afghanistan in 2021, nobody saw him for months. Dead? In hiding? Nobody knew. Then in October 2021, he walked into a madrassa in Kandahar. It was the time of the evening prayer. He slipped in among the students. An elderly-looking man, seeming ordinary, he stepped forward to the place reserved for the imam and led the prayer. When it was over, a few teachers began quietly chanting the word Emir. The students had no idea who the man beside them was until that moment. He looked like he wasn't no one. He lives in a rented house in Kandahar, not in the presidential palace. He governs 38 million people from his house. With these letters, he had a son, or had. Abdul Rahman carried out a suicide attack against a military base Helmand in 2017. The father sent his down this road, or he could have stopped him and didn't. What is the difference? That question is yours to answer. In 2022, he issued the prohibition. With a single decree, he achieved the fastest narcotic suppression in recorded history, a 95% drop in cultivation. The world offered cautious praise, but there's a phase not looked at alongside that decree. 450,000 farmers lost their livelihoods. The Afghan economy lost $1.3 billion a year. 90% of the population already lives below the poverty line. That ban, somewhere inside those numbers, means a father who could not plant his seed that season. In January 2025, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for him for crimes against humanity committed against women and girls. No country recognizes him, and yet China formally accepted the Taliban ambassador in Beijing. Russia deepened its engagement. The world ignores him and does business with him. At the same time, only day Kabul fell. 30, 40, maybe 50 years had passed since the beginning of the journey that brought you here. Since that madrassa where a man in a black turban handed a child Kalashnikov, now you are in Kabul. You are in the presidential palace. The desks are white, screens glow. A room full of devices the Taliban had banned. But bans don't apply in the room of the victors. Outside there is a crowd. Some are clinging to aircraft at the airport. Some are weeping. You won. An $83 billion army. A quality of 40 nations. 20 years of training and equipment. All of it dissolved in a matter of weeks. How will the history books write this? As the period when the world's most powerful military force withdrew in the face of a movement with no payroll, no air force, no carpeted offices. But now you realize, fighting was one skill, governing is another. In a country where that machinery ran for 2 decades, 38 million people are watching you. Hospitals are losing function because female nurses are barred from working. The economy is contracting because international aid has been cut. Young girls are not going to school, and maternal mortality in Afghanistan is among the highest on the earth. For every 100,000 births, 638 mothers die. When female doctors disappear, that number will climb. You know these numbers, or you don't want to. Black turban, white turban, Kalashnikov, ministerial desk, Kandahar, Kabul, madrassa, palace. This is the journey. At the beginning there was a child. At the end there is a state. What happened in between? What was done to human beings? How many families were shattered? How many women were made invisible? How many children was a weapon before they saw a classroom? You know this, and you live with it.